NBC had a science fiction series on a while back. You probably remember it. It was called Star Trek.
When Star Trek first appeared on television in the 1960s, no one could have imagined how deeply it would shape science fiction and pop culture. What started as a small TV series on NBC turned into a global phenomenon that inspired generations. The show stood out for its bold view of the future, a future where humanity had moved beyond war, poverty, and hate. But while audiences were busy exploring new worlds with Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, there were many small secrets, tricks, and hidden details happening behind the scenes. Some were clever production solutions. Others were emotional stories that revealed the struggles and creativity of the people who built the Star Trek universe. Over time, fans have uncovered these secrets one by one, often realizing that they were never meant to notice them in the first place. From reused props and unexpected materials to touching personal experiences and studio drama, these behind-the-scenes moments give us a whole new way to appreciate Star Trek. The series didn't just show us life among the stars. It also proved how imagination, teamwork, and determination could make anything possible, even with the smallest of budgets. One of the most emotional behind-the-scenes stories in Star Trek involves Grace Lee Whitney, who played Yeoman Janice Rand in the original series. At first, her character was supposed to be an important part of the show, possibly even a love interest for Captain Kirk. However, she disappeared after just a few episodes. For many years, no one knew why. Later, Whitney revealed that she had been the victim of a sexual assault by a studio executive during her time on the show, something she believed led to her being written out. It was a heartbreaking experience that left deep scars. Yet Whitney showed incredible strength. She fought through addiction and personal pain, and eventually returned to the Star Trek universe in later films and Star Trek Voyager. Her story is remembered not only for tragedy but also for survival. During one of her most difficult scenes, The Enemy Within, an evil version of Captain Kirk tries to assault her character. Though filming that moment was painful, Whitney said William Shatner was respectful and protective. She once said, "Spock never needed me for my body. He needed me for my feelings," showing how deeply she valued her character's emotional side. Whitney's courage and honesty brought attention to the darker side of Hollywood, and reminded fans that even in the world of science fiction, very human struggles existed behind the camera. Star Trek. The original series might be beloved today, but when it first aired, NBC didn't treat it kindly. After 2 seasons, the show was struggling with ratings, yet it had built a strong and passionate fan base. When NBC decided to cancel it, fans launched a massive letter-writing campaign, begging the network to save it. Their efforts worked, but only halfway. NBC renewed Star Trek for a 3rd season, but with severe limitations. The budget was cut by more than half, and the time slot was moved to 10 p.m. on Fridays, one of the worst possible times for a TV show. As a result, the production team had to reuse old sets, simplify storylines, and limit special effects. It was almost impossible to keep the same level of creativity. Gene Roddenberry, the show's creator, was so frustrated that he stepped back from daily production. In a way, NBC didn't just cancel Star Trek, it quietly set it up to fail. Ironically, after the show ended, reruns introduced it to new audiences, and its popularity exploded. The very thing NBC tried to bury became one of the most important television series ever made. This story shows how Star Trek's true victory wasn't on network ratings. It was in the hearts of millions, of fans who refused to let it die. Few on-screen partnerships are as iconic as Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, but behind the scenes, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy shared a friendship that was both strong and strained. During the early days of the show, Shatner, as the lead actor, sometimes felt overshadowed by Nimoy's growing popularity. Fans loved Spock's calm logic and mysterious personality, and this attention created quiet tension between the two. Over time, however, they developed real respect for one another. They worked together for decades, attended fan conventions, and often spoke fondly of each other's talent. Sadly, their friendship took a painful turn late in life. According to Shatner, Nimoy stopped speaking to him, possibly because Shatner had used footage of Nimoy in his documentary The Captains without permission. The two never reconciled before Nimoy's death in 2015. Shatner later said it was one of his biggest regrets, writing a book titled Leonard, My 50-Year Friendship with a Remarkable Man as a Tribute. Their story reminds fans that even lifelong friendships can be complicated, and that behind the heroism and logic of their characters, both men were human, with pride, misunderstandings, and deep affection that lasted until the end. Many fans assume that the Klingons' costumes and weapons were made with high-tech materials, but the truth is far more amusing. In the episode Day of the Dove, the Klingons appear ready for battle, wearing what looks like metallic belts and armor. However, if you look closely, you'll see something familiar. Bubble wrap. The props team painted regular packing material gold to make it look futuristic. It was cheap, lightweight, and available on short notice. This wasn't unusual for Star Trek. The crew constantly reused everyday objects and gave them a space-age look. Many control panels were made of painted cardboard, bottles became alien drinks, and ping-pong balls turned into glowing spaceship parts. These clever tricks weren't just about saving money. They were about creativity. The production team worked under impossible deadlines but managed to make the world of Star Trek look believable. Fans didn't notice these details for decades, especially since old televisions in the 1960s had low resolution. Today, in high definition, viewers can spot these small secrets. But rather than ruining the magic, they make fans admire the ingenuity that built this universe on such a small budget. Another clever prop secret comes from the episode The Corbomite Maneuver. It introduced a mysterious alien ship called the Phasaerus, which looked like a glowing futuristic sphere. But in reality, this impressive model was covered with hundreds of ping-pong balls. The production team glued and painted them to create a texture that would catch light in just the right way. On 1960s television screens, it looked smooth and high-tech, not like sports equipment. The ping-pong ball trick shows how the team's creativity could turn the simplest items into convincing sci-fi objects. Star Trek's low budget forced its artists to think outside the box. Instead of expensive materials, they used what they could find in toy stores or hardware shops. Ping-pong balls were cheap, lightweight, and easy to modify, making them perfect for space models. It's a small example of how the magic of Star Trek wasn't just in the writing or acting. It was in the resourceful imagination of everyone behind the camera. One of the most famous images in Star Trek is the Vulcan salute, the hand gesture paired with the phrase, "Live long and prosper." It became a universal symbol of peace and logic, but it didn't come from a scriptwriter or producer. Leonard Nimoy himself created it, inspired by a childhood memory. Nimoy grew up in a Jewish family in Boston, and as a boy, he once saw a group of men performing a sacred blessing in a synagogue. They held their hands in a special shape, fingers split down the middle, the same shape that would later become the Vulcan salute. Years later, while filming the episode Amok Time, Nimoy suggested adding a unique greeting for the Vulcan people. The director agreed, and a piece of ancient spiritual tradition found new life in outer space. This simple gesture became one of the most recognizable symbols in all of science fiction, showing how personal inspiration can create something truly timeless. The transporter, the device that beams people from a ship to a planet, is one of Star Trek's most famous inventions. It looks futuristic, but it was actually born from financial limitations. In the 1960s, showing a spaceship landing on a planet would have required expensive models and effects. The production team needed a cheaper and faster solution, so they came up with the idea of a machine that could instantly transport people using beams of light. The shimmering effect and sound design made it seem magical, and it quickly became a symbol of the show's creativity. The first episode ever aired, The Man Trap, featured the transporter, allowing the story to start quickly without wasting time on spaceship landings. What began as a cost-saving measure ended up becoming one of Star Trek's greatest innovations. It's a perfect example of how limits can inspire genius ideas. James Doohan, who played Scotty, was one of Star Trek's most beloved characters. But few fans know that he carried a silent reminder of real-world heroism. During World War II, Doohan served in the Royal Canadian Artillery and landed on Juno Beach on D-Day. In the chaos, he was shot several times by friendly fire, and one bullet took off his right middle finger. To hide this on camera, he used clever hand positions and camera angles. Occasionally, sharp-eyed viewers can spot the missing finger in certain episodes. While fans often see the Star Trek cast as a close-knit family exploring space together, the truth behind the camera was sometimes far less harmonious. Many of the actors loved the show but fought constantly with exhaustion, low pay, and tension over screen time. William Shatner, for instance, was accused by some cast members of trying to steal scenes or demanding extra lines. George Takei and Nichelle Nichols both mentioned in interviews that they felt overshadowed or ignored at times. Yet despite these difficulties, the cast continued to deliver powerful performances. Leonard Nimoy often defended his co-stars and used his growing influence to argue for better treatment for everyone. Over time, these struggles helped the actors bond in unexpected ways. They realized they were part of something bigger than their disagreements. A series that was quietly changing television forever. When fans watch Star Trek today, the chemistry between the crew feels real, partly because it came from genuine emotion, both good and bad. What fans didn't see was how much personal effort and pride went into every scene, even when morale on set was low. Another thing most fans never notice is how many Star Trek stories were never filmed at all. Dozens of scripts were written but rejected for being too expensive, too controversial, or too strange for 1960s audiences. Some stories involved alien civilizations with ideas that mirrored real-world political issues, such as the Vietnam War or the Civil Rights Movement. NBC executives often forced the writers to tone down these messages. A few of these scripts have survived in archives, and reading them today shows how daring the writers really were. One unproduced story, for example, dealt with a planet where machines ruled over humans, a theme that would later appear in The Next Generation with the Borg. Another script involved a crew member becoming half alien after an experiment gone wrong, a concept that was far ahead of its time. These lost ideas remind us that Star Trek has always been about pushing boundaries. Even when the network said no, the imagination of the writers continued to explore boldly, just like the crew of the Enterprise. When Star Trek first aired, its technology looked like pure fantasy, but many of its ideas ended up predicting real inventions. The handheld communicators inspired modern cell phones. The Enterprise's computer voice, controlled by spoken commands, was an early vision of what we now know as Siri, Alexa, or Google Assistant. Even the sliding doors seen on the ship became real-life automatic doors in malls and hospitals. The show's writers didn't set out to predict the future. They simply imagined tools that would make sense in a high-tech world. Yet scientists and engineers grew up watching Star Trek and later built those very devices. NASA even named its first space shuttle Enterprise, after a fan campaign inspired by the show. This connection between imagination and real progress shows how powerful storytelling can be. Star Trek didn't just entertain. It inspired generations of thinkers, proving that good fiction can change reality itself. If you've watched the original Star Trek, you probably know the red shirt joke. Whenever a crew member wearing a red uniform joins a landing party, they're probably not coming back. This became a long-running meme in fan culture, but few people know how it started. The original reason was practical. Red shirts often represented security or engineering officers, roles that were considered expendable in early scripts. When writers needed a dramatic moment, they would have one of these unnamed crew members die to show danger without losing a major character. Over time, this pattern became so common that audiences began to expect it. What's interesting, though, is that the color choice had nothing to do with danger. It was simply a fabric color that showed up well under studio lights. Later series like The Next Generation changed the uniform colors to break the pattern. But the red shirt legacy remains a symbol of how quickly fans can turn small production choices into cultural legends. It's also a reminder that every background character in Star Trek represents the countless real people, technicians, designers, extras, who helped bring the show to life but rarely got credit. The unforgettable Star Trek theme, composed by Alexander Courage, set the mood for adventure and mystery. But few fans know how limited the show's music budget was. In fact, Courage was told to create melodies that could be reused across multiple episodes to save money. Many sound effects were made from ordinary items. Door whooshes came from compressed air recordings, phaser blasts from reversed audio clips, and the transporter sound from a blend of harp glissandos and electronic feedback. Because sound libraries didn't exist yet, everything had to be recorded manually. The team's inventiveness gave Star Trek its unique atmosphere. Later series honored these early effects by recreating or updating them digitally. The famous whoosh of the Enterprise passing by is now considered one of the most iconic sounds in television history, yet it came from nothing more than a mix of noise and imagination. In the 1960s, American television rarely showed diverse casts or equal representation. Star Trek broke that rule boldly. It featured characters from different ethnic backgrounds working together as equals, something revolutionary at the time. Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, was one of the first black women on American TV to hold a position of authority instead of a stereotypical role. Martin Luther King Jr. personally encouraged